In astrology, Venus is the planet of accord, love, harmony, friendship, and beauty. She describes how you show and express affection, how you relate with the opposite sex, as well as what kind of relationship you're most likely to have. Today's video is all about the secrets of attraction and your Venus sign. My name is Anastasia. I'm a traditional Western astrologer specializing in natal, relationship, and predictive readings. If you enjoy my content and want to show your support, please take a few seconds of your time to leave me a like or a comment, subscribe, and press that notification bell. It helps YouTube algorithm push my videos in front of the line, helps my channel grow. Thank you for that. You also have the option of showing your appreciation by buying me a coffee or tea or whatever your heart desires. Thank you to everyone who has taken advantage of that option. Before we dive in, a couple of announcements. If you want to work with me, you have important questions about your natal chart. If you feel confused in life, you want to know what's coming up for you, you can book a reading on my website, anastasiadoesastrology.com. There's a couple of duration options, few reading options, so you can find something tailored just for you. And on my website in the shop section, you can find the products I create. For example, since we're talking about Venus, my Exalted Venus candle is perfect for anyone looking for better relationship dynamics, for easier self-expression, more imagination, and more connection to the femininity within you, your feminine energy. It is green, the color of Venus. It is decorated with aquamarine stone, which is one of the stones of Venus, and it is perfect for anyone born with their natal Venus in Virgo, Aries, or Scorpio, the signs of fall and detriment. If your Venus is in a dark house, if it's retrograde, dark houses being 6th, 8th, or 12th. If it's retrograde, if it's square opposite or conjunct Saturn, square opposite Mars, Uranus, Neptune. Or just in general, if you feel like your relationship can use more pleasure and sort of fun, if you feel like things have been a little bit heavy. And I also have a Venus in Libra 2 candle. The first edition that was created in 2022 has recently sold out, which is very exciting. But this is the second edition, which highlights the powerful Venus in the sign of rulership Libra. You can find this on my website too, and it's similarly perfect for people born with their Venus in Virgo, Scorpio, or Aries. All the things I mentioned before apply. This one smells like honeysuckle jasmine versus Venus, Exalted Venus smells like high tide, so a little bit more oceany, refreshing. And this one is, I actually really like the scent of this one. It's like sweet, but not too overpowering. So check out my website for that. Thank you for listening. Thank you for the support. Let's talk about Venus. Before we dive into the signs, I'd like to talk about Venus in astronomy and Venus in astrology. So Venus is the second planet from the sun. We talked about Mercury being the first one, and Mercury being sort of the messenger of the sun, being the closest to the sun. Venus is very close to us. She's right, she's our neighbor together with Mars, but they frame us on each side. And her atmosphere reflects a lot of light. So when Venus is visible, she's the brightest, obviously, except for the moon, other than the moon. But she's the brightest, she's the most beautiful. That's why Venus is connected to diamonds, because those are the brightest, sort of the most beautiful stone considered by many. Venus is often considered, it's portrayed as a woman holding a mirror. It's associated with the Greek goddess Aphrodite, famous for its beauty, powers of seduction. A lot of wars have been fought for Aphrodite, so she represents the force of attraction to be reckoned with, sort of the powerful, beautiful feminine energy, as well as experience of connection, experience of leisure, joy, pleasure, which opens us up, relaxes us, and also connects us with other people. Venus is often considered to be like the cosmic glue. She brings things together that seemingly should not be together. It's like, the same, it's Venus ruling beauty, describing our style. You can put together pieces of clothing that separately, or to an outsider, they might seem not to work, but then you put them together and they do. So Venus has this power to not only bring together pieces of clothing, but also maybe different materials, different people, different culture. sort of create ease in relationships. And that's why the strength of Venus is so important. So people born with their Venus in Taurus or Libra tend to naturally be really good at this kind of stuff, versus if you have Venus in a more challenging position of Virgo, Aries, or Scorpio, that's, there's a little bit of more tension, and we'll talk about that in a second. But definitely, if you need extra help, check out my store. So Venus rules affection, how you express affection, how you receive affection, right? What you need to feel loved, or how you perceive love. For example, Venus in Virgo might express affection through the acts of service, and as well as feel loved. As if the partner is there, Venus in Gemini might need words of affirmation. Venus in Cancer might need quality time, right? Venus in Libra might need presence. So we're sort of diving into the territory of love languages here. It also describes what kind of sex appeal you possess and how desirable you are. Once again, Venus in Libra will be very flirtatious, very sort of charming, versus Venus in Scorpio might be like a lot more magnetic, a lot more intense and passionate and sort of secretive and mysterious. So that's like a different, versus Venus in Libra will just be like playful and sort of confident, and here I am and I know I look pretty and I have a million of admirers. And that could be also part of the sex appeal, right? Just knowing that you're popular and knowing that you can find the next suitor at any point. It describes your creativity. It could describe what kind of creative talents you have. Once again, if you're born with Venus in Virgo, you might be really good at like editing, taking things apart. Hairstylists often have Venus in Virgo. Plastic surgeons, anywhere you need to like perfect things, versus Venus in Libra might be very artistic. Venus in Taurus might be a singer because Taurus rules the throat. Then it also talks about like what kind of pleasures you might be drawn to, how you spend money, what you spend money on, your friendships, whether you make friends easily, whether you're popular or not, as well as what type of gifts you like to give and receive. So positive side of Venus, sort of higher manifestation of Venus, creates a person who's friendly, generous, affectionate, capable of love, joy, and sharing with others, versus the more negative side of Venus may create someone who's greedy or controlling or too self-indulgent. Think about Taurus at its best, the sign ruled by Venus, and Taurus at its worst, right? Like at its worst, slow, steady, lazy, lay on the couch, eat delicious food, not move, gain weight, try to control your partner. On the positive, very creative, very in the flow, very in the moment, connected with nature, generous, loving, feeds their friends, stuff like that. So, and every single person, no matter the sign, even if it's like a weaker sign, I'm born with Venus in Virgo, so every single person can go through the lighter and the more shadow manifestations of it. Like if you're born with Venus in Taurus, it's lovely, but it doesn't mean that it's always sort of easy and chill and fun. And that's where you need to look at the entire chart. You need to see what the rest of the chart has to say, what house the planet is in, what's her condition, is she direct, is she retrograde, is she making aspects to other planets. So a lot, needs to be considered. And in order to understand it better, you can always book a reading on my website, anastasiadoesastrology.com, and we will dive in and take a deep look at your Venus or any other placements in sort of a coherent Venusian way. So let's take a look at the zodiac signs and give you some insights about your attraction style, about your sex appeal, about your romantic desires, and things like that. Starting as always with Aries. If you were born with Venus in Aries, this is very Xena the warrior type Venus, right? You have the planet of love in the sign of Mars. And whenever the planet, any planet, whenever it's placed in the sign other than its own, for Venus, it's Taurus and Libra. So anytime Venus is placed in the sign other than Taurus and Libra, she will have to behave in accord to the nature of that sign. So Mars rules Aries, and it's very like young as youthful energy of Mars, very impulsive, very quick. So when it comes to people born with Venus and Aries, they tend to know, like, right away. I'm really bad at snapping my fingers. I'm doing it a little bit. But like, they tend to know right away. They're not the kind of people that will like take their time and do a few rounds. They know if they like you, they like you. And depending on the condition of their Mars, they would be a lot more willing to like jump into things, or not so willing. Like, I know a few people actually born with their Venus in Aries, but their Mars in Cancer. Mars in Cancer really craves connection, intimacy, soulful sort of, attraction. So these people, even though their Venus is in Aries, they might choose to take it a little bit more slow, but they will still know. Very direct also in their expression of affection, especially if it's a guy, maybe even more so. They like you, they will tell you, they will directly gonna ask you out and be like, okay, let's go for it. Venus and Aries people crave a challenge, and that is where the detriment of Venus comes in, because Venus in Aries is considered to be in detriment. It's, listen to it lightly. Sometimes, myself included, when I hear that like Venus or other planet is in a difficult condition, it's like easy to build up crazy stories about it and think like, oh my God, my love life will never like work out or whatever. But Venus being in detriment says that Venus, which is all about gluing things together, being placed in the sign of Mars is not the easiest for Venus, because Mars is about cutting, Mars is about severing, Mars is about independence. So Venus in Aries, in its best manifestation, can be very like independent, very much into female empowerment, happy on her own, courageous, brave, sort of having fun. But in the more shadow manifestation, or in the more difficult manifestation, you can be stuck in a situation where you're like just constantly dealing with challenges and facing fights and drama in your relationships, or you keep, you sort of consciously or unconsciously, you enjoy the chase and you end up in relation, or you end up sort of chasing and trying to figure things out and not having any stability in a relationship. That's why I highly, highly recommend Venus in Libra 2 candle for people born with their Venus in Aries, because this is the opposite energy. And this can teach you how to chill, how to relax, how to flirt, how to not rush into things, because once again, it can sometimes hurt you if you're jumping into things a little bit too fast, especially for those of you with their sun in the sensitive sign of Pisces, or your moon being a lot more sensitive, or your Mars being in Cancer. So you're kind of learning to slow down. But it could be, I think that like youthful enthusiasm can be very attractive in this placement. You can be someone who like wears a lot more red. Maybe have like a more noticeable like head of hair, maybe like literally have like red hair or something about you that's like red, that is attracted to red. You enjoy freshness in a relationship, so a partner that can keep you on your toes. Doesn't have to be like, just always like hit and run, but the partner who's interesting, who's challenging to you. You can be with someone who's like, I think, just like boring. And you can be very, I think, like very courageous and brave and like the best cheerleader, very like protective of the people you love. Yeah, and like very much attract people through that like youthful energy, through wearing red color, through like highlighting your head, your hair, your sort of like prominent best features. If you're curious to know more, book a reading on my website, anastasiadoesastrology.com, and we can talk about your Venus and the rest of your chart. For those of you born with Venus in Taurus, you're in luck. This is Venus in the sign of rulership, and you should be naturally blessed with a lot of Venusian charm. So in order to understand Venus in rulership, we got to look at the nature of the sign of Taurus. Taurus is a feminine sign. It's a fixed sign. It's an earthy sign, right? It's the sign that enjoys pleasures, that enjoys tasting food, touching sheets, digging fingers into the fur of a cat or a dog, being in nature, listening to birds, right? So when you put Venus in this sign, it's someone who is very like physical, very tactile, very warm, and maybe like, kind of affectionate. Depending on the rest of your chart, you may be affectionate in private or in public. You are, and like your charm too, your charm just comes from this like earthy, attractive quality of like being in the moment and savoring and appreciating things, and like other people might see you and be like, it's like the Empress card in tarot, like someone who's just in their power and their femininity. Men or women, like men with this placement can be very stylish as well and can be quite like magnetic in their own way. You are very much connected to nature, very much like turned on by tactile, physical sensations, sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch, especially potentially to your neck. Like neck can be extra sensitive if you're trying to attract Venus in Taurus. Maybe you can, you can touch their neck, but with consent. No random touching of people's necks. Very affectionate, very romantic, can be very generous, can be like very, sort of committed. It's a very committed placement. You want connection that is long lasting. You will dedicate a lot to it. You will work on building it. You're not afraid of investing time, working through difficulties. It's also a very creative placement. And depending on the sign of your Mercury, if you're born with Venus in Taurus and like Mercury in Taurus, you can be a great singer or a great writer, a very like creative person. And being with a partner who can be stable and trustworthy is also really important for them. And of course, the shadow side of any sign, here the shadow side could be like being too possessive, controlling, looking at your partner as one of your prized possessions, even if you don't admit it to yourself fully, but you might still sort of choose to be like, I love you, so I know best for you. So try to make sure that you're not like just being too controlling in that regard. And if you're curious to know more, book a reading on my website, anastasiadoesastrology.com. On my website, you can also find my candles. Venus and Pisces could be a great fit for you just because your natal Venus is already strong and this is exalted Venus and it's in a sextile to your natal Venus. Moving on to those born with Venus in Gemini. Here we have Venus in the domain of the young, chatty Mercury. And what does Venus become? She becomes flirtatious. She becomes chatty. She becomes a little bit like a butterfly, like from here to here, jumping around, right? I like this placement. My best friend has it, and like with my moon, it always works really well. It's a very verbal, very clever Venus. You may be someone who like enjoys debating or enjoys chatting. Like you likely know a little bit about everything. And so like a partner who can stimulate your mind, a partner who can be as chatty or at least as like engaged of a listener as you need could be perfect, could be like really, really important. You may be someone who like needs to talk about your feelings, needs to express things in a verbal way. You may be, it may be difficult for you to go without conversation, text, or connection with people you love for too long because you need to hear their voice. Speaking of voice, you may be turned on by voice. You may be turned on by conversation. You're very much likely to be like, we talk about Mars a lot when we talk about sex, but Venus still describes how you attract what you find attractive. So someone with a beautiful voice, someone with a lot of ideas, you may be like really interested in, what kind of thoughts they have on sex, what kind of sort of role play they can imagine, etc. So it's like really important for you to be verbally stimulated, potentially more so than physically. You're maybe quite changeable in your interests and your tastes and your styles, maybe open to a lot of different things, needing variety, needing like sort of, a variety of different experiences, multiple stimuli. And of course, speaking of this, there is a shadow potentially there, right? Like Venus and Gemini can be a little bit hard to pin down, a little bit hard to understand, a little bit non-committal. Maybe they've been with you for like 10 years, but you're still always like, is she fully here? Is she not? So sometimes that like need for stimuli, need for different relationships, depending on the rest of your chart, can affect things. Like I've seen Venus and Gemini be like perfectly loyal in a stable relationship, happy, because the person maybe had a lot of Taurus. And I've also seen people with Venus and Gemini there's a family member who has that, be completely disloyal to their partner, because that Venus in Gemini came with the Gemini sun, with Mars in Aries, with a lot of like air, fire. So if you're like very airy, you're more likely to be just like open and interested in maybe like having open relationships, like being free in your expression, not tethered to anything, versus the rest of your chart being more stable or watery will change things drastically. Let me know how this resonates, and if you're curious to know more, book a reading on my website, anastasiadoesastrology.com. I would also recommend my Venus in Libra 2 candle for you guys, because it's a harmonious Venus in the sign of rulership, and it's in an aspect to your natal air Venus. Both air Venuses are great. If you were born with Venus in Cancer, I love this Venus. I'm dating this Venus, so I'm just like, but I really like this Venus, because Venus in Cancer is very nurturing. You're gonna be so focused on taking care of your people you love, of your dogs, of your plants. You will make sure they have enough water, they have enough food. You're just someone who has the power to make other people feel comfortable, loved, secure, attended to. You might express your affection through food. You might also be someone who like really likes good food and really likes sort of comfort. So if you're dating a Venus in Cancer, maybe feed them, maybe make sure you're giving them their best like snacks, their favorite things. It's a lunar ruled Venus. Cancer is ruled by the moon, so there is a little bit more of changeability, right? A little bit more of moodiness. And that's where like the more challenging side of Venus and Cancer may come in. Maybe your feelings go through ups and downs. Maybe you're a little bit more timid in the early stages. It's not like, Venus and Cancer is in a square to Venus and Aries. Venus and Aries will just like go for it, jump into things. Versus Venus and Cancer is a lot more like, take it slow. I'm going to look feminine. I'm going to look beautiful. I'm going to make sure you feel like I'm taking care of you. I'm paying attention to you. And then you come to me. So it's not the most like in your face type energy. You can be protective of your feelings. You can be a little bit passive aggressive. Let's be honest, right? Venus and Cancer people can sometimes be like, why are you like fighting with me? I made food for you. Or why, like, or be like, like my friend's boyfriend got her flowers, instead of directly being like, that would be so nice if you get me flowers. Very kind of like motherly for sure. You may find yourself comfortable, nurturing and mothering other people. Very loyal, very melancholic in a lot of ways, but like, there's like a strong connection with family for Venus and Cancer, and you might actually benefit through your family, like have family who is very tight-knit, and maybe, parents who watch your kids, or parents who like help you pay student loans, just sort of like very involved parents. And like the loyalty comes into with like the ability to, like, you attach really, really deeply. Once you have like picked a partner, it's like, once like for life type of connection. I recommend my Exalted Venus candle for people born with Venus in Cancer, because this is Venus in Pisces. It's exalted. It's a little bit better in like outgoing with the flow, being in the moment. So it can help, maybe like mellow you a little bit more and help with moodiness if you're curious. And if you want to know more, book a reading on my website, anastasiadoesastrology.com. Also make sure to let me know what you think. If you think there is more to you as a Venus in Cancer, please add. Now, if you're born with Venus in Leo, this is Venus ruled by the sun. This is the royal Venus, right? This is like, I have arrived. You walk in the room with your beautiful hair. People notice. People stop. You are very kind of like, you have strong presence. And so your style might be bigger, bolder, brighter, or like something, something like maybe it's your hair, maybe something like, maybe it's the colors you choose, maybe it's the style you have. There is just like something about you that feels royal and regal. And of course, a lot would depend on like the sign of your Venus. You may be born with the sun in Libra and Venus in Leo, and the sun in Libra is a little bit it's a bit of a difficult placement for the sun to be in because it's all about the relationship and less about just me. If you have that placement, sunlight in a jar is the choice for you. But in general, it's, you know, it's a very like creative, very playful, very like the star has arrived energy. So many celebrities, so many Hollywood people have this placement because they have the power to grab attention, and so do you. So, you know, you may enjoy creative pursuits, you may enjoy relationships that have a little bit of like playful, at times a little bit dramatic, let's be honest, right? Like Venus and Leo can be, if you get bored and you're not getting attention and you're not self-aware, you might perhaps create some drama. Or crave some drama, or like want to gossip or want to hear some stories. So you gotta be, you know, you gotta be aware of that, and you gotta be aware of your like, you know, allow other people to be the center of attention once in a while. Be aware of your tendency to want to maybe be in control or want things to go a certain way because it's a fixed Venus. And then just make sure that you're expressing this like desire for play, drama, you know, just like through other ways. Maybe it's through role playing with your partner, or going on adventures together, like doing things like maybe seeing a show, maybe acting, maybe dancing, like getting a chance to express that without a need to create some tension in your life. If you want help, if you want extra juice, check out my Venus in Libra 2 candle. It's perfect for you because it's Venus in the sign of rulership. She's naturally gracious, playful, charming, so it can only add to your natal Venus in Leo. If you want to know more, book a reading on my website, anastasiadoesastrology.com, and I can break down your natal chart and talk about a lot more than just your natal Venus. And let me know how this resonates. If you were born with Venus in Virgo, this is me, this is us. Venus in Virgo is Venus ruled by Mercury. So she's very mercurial, right? But it's not Mercury in Gemini where it's like the world is a candy store and let me just grab a spoon. Or what is it, ice cream store? Anyways, but like in Virgo, it's all about narrowing things down. It's all about critical thinking. It's all about being analytical. And that's why Venus struggles in Virgo, right? Because there's that saying where mind is strong, love is weak. Where love is weak, mind is strong. That's why Venus is struggling in Virgo and Mercury is struggling in Pisces, because Pisces is a sign of a lover and it's hard to be sometimes very rational when you're just craving connection. But Venus in Virgo is very rational. That's why I highly recommend my Venus in Libra 2 or Exalted Venus candles. That's how my whole candle business started, because I wanted to help myself be in the moment, be more present. So since we're talking about the more like challenging sides of Venus, right? If your Venus is in Virgo, you're an overthinker. It's Venus in its fall, so you may fall into the trap of like thinking things to death or seeing the negatives and sort of going down that path of being like, okay, now the world is over, everything is dark, everything is depressing. So you need to be aware of it, right? A lot of times when you're born with Venus in Virgo, you may have a more critical parent. So when you were growing up, you couldn't be in the moment. Like you would eat ice cream or you would play, you would fall down and like, you know, the ice cream will roll down your face as a kid, or you fall down, you get a stain, and then you had a parent that would be like very critical. So you end up being extra critical with yourself. But there is always the positive side. You can work through these things. You can apply your critical eye to being in a creative field, being an editor, being a surgeon, being a designer, a hairstylist, anywhere. Like Venus in Virgo has the knowledge of things being tough. She has, yes, the mind is strong and it might be tough to be in the moment, tough to relax, but you have the awareness of like what needs to be done. You know that love is complicated. You know that things can get difficult. So your mind can be like really, really helpful when it comes to approaching the relationship from the practical side, serving to people you love. Of course, you know, you got to make sure that you're not choosing people that are falling apart or like playing a victim and then you are being their savior, because that's not gonna fly, right? That's not the way you stay in a relationship or make things work for a really long time. So very humble, very charming. Like, you know, you might enjoy like wearing white colors, or your style might be like very classy. You may be artistic, but like a little bit perfectionist, right? And like shy, which is also very attractive about you, kind of this like virginal energy with a hint of being the opposite in the bedroom, right? Like Venus and Virgo sometimes can be quite promiscuous, and a lot will depend on your Mars sign. So if you're Venus and Virgo, Mars and Scorpio, that's like very, you know, sexual, powerful energy. And romantically, you're likely to be a little bit more slow. You might be looking at the person and, you know, kind of moving at your own speed and just like learning. In general, I think you're learning to take care of yourself and love yourself first, and develop like serious rituals and be kind of happy within, so that your relationships can grow too, or like so that you attract the partner who is not disruptive to your rituals in your life, but instead like adds to it. Let me know how this resonates. Check out my candles. Once again, highly recommend the Venusian candle for any Venus and Virgo. And if you want to know more, book a reading on my website, anastasiadoesastrology.com. If you were born with Venus in Libra, this is another powerful sign, hence the candles that I created while Venus was in Libra. This could be great for you. This would be like a natural fit and just a chance to like boost your natal Venus. So Venus in Libra too, check it out. But Venus in Libra, people, is the Venus in the sign of rulership, Venus in a young, active, airy, social sign of Libra. So naturally, you're someone very fair, very focused on justice, very kind of rational and mental in a lot of ways. You are interested in people who can stimulate your mind, people who are interesting, people who are, you know, great conversationalists, because you are that. So you want people who sort of connect. And that's why Venus in Libra can be sometimes, can have like so many suitors but not know which one to choose, or take a little bit longer to figure it out. It's Venus at its best in terms of flirting. Like Venus and Libra people know how to flirt. They will smile at you, they will chat with you. They're just doing it because that's who they are. Versus like Venus and Aries might be a little bit like too direct, too forward, right? But Venus and Libra and Venus and Aries can work too, because you need some of the direct energy to balance the little bit more indirect. You are likely to be very creative, very artistic, have a good sense of style, maybe like be extra feminine, male or female. You have like a strong connection to your feminine side, and you enjoy and appreciate symmetry, traditional beauty. A little bit different if it's Venus retrograde in Libra. You might find beauty in asymmetrical, unique sort of different things, but in general, you will, you know, it's going to be likely very like classical, artistic, bent to your mind, very like liking symmetry, liking colors and brights, or like beautiful, maybe softer colors. You need peace, you need tranquility. On the shadow, you can be a little bit people-pleasing, right? A little bit fickle, indecisive. Flirting for the sake of flirting is great, but sometimes like confusing people and dating multiple people without telling them maybe is a bit of a shadow side. And you can find yourself at times, you know, like you need this perfect relationship, and you're likely quite idealistic. You're like very romantic, but at times you're like, this is my soulmate, this is the right person, I have found them. And then hide or not express, not connect with like frustration, not express it to your partner, not express it. You don't need to share it with the world, right? But like the need for peace, the need for like the perfect relationship can inhibit your ability to be in the relationship or deal with conflict, address challenges. So you need to learn that a little bit of friction, a little bit of disagreement, and like truth telling will not hurt a relationship. It will actually make it stronger and help you connect better. Let me know how this resonates, and if you're curious to know more, book a reading on my website, anastasiadoesastrology.com. Moving on to Scorpio Venus. This is another Venus in the sign ruled by Mars. So passionate, so deep. Venus in Scorpio is like being, if you're in love with Venus in Scorpio, you're in love without skin. You're truly raw, truly vulnerable, depending, of course, on how self-aware Venus and Scorpio is. But it's a very like deep, all-consuming love when you love Venus in Scorpio. But it starts off, they're likely to be a little bit, more like observing you. They might actually be observing you for months before you even realize, like attracting you with their look. They often have like very magnetic eyes to them and very kind of ability to attract without even saying anything. It's like seething, seething, I don't know, like really hot energy. They tend to be like very passionate, but like a lot of times I think their charm comes from being mysterious, being a little bit like private, keeping their passion to themselves before they let you in. The shadow side, Venus in Scorpio, is considered to be in its detriment, so you may struggle romantically for a little bit in life. There might be a lot of ups and downs, a lot of sort of questions of death and rebirth, betrayal, trust issues, protectiveness in your relationships until you learn how to work with it, until you learn how to choose relationships that are more, that are still deep and passionate, but perhaps more stable, more connected, more like where power is shared versus controlled. I highly recommend, if you're born with Venus in Scorpio, exalted Venus is just the right fit for you, because this one has Venus in Pisces. It's still a water Venus, so it's harmoniously connecting with yours, but it has Venus in the sign of exaltation. I was like, see, Venus right here. But because it's Venus in the sign of exaltation, Venus in Pisces is a lot more chill, a lot more easygoing, a lot more able to like connect with that romantic energy versus try to protect oneself from being hurt. And every experience, every painful experience will teach you to do better, to choose better, to share with people who deserve your trust. And you're likely someone who has quite strong intuition. You're capable of choosing the right partners. You just, at times, most times, you need to go through a bit of a turbulence to learn. And watch out also for the tendency to be like too possessive, controlling, like checking your partner's phones. Try to work on like trusting them if they deserve your trust. But perhaps give people a chance to win you over without assuming that, something will go wrong. Let me know how this resonates. Add anything to it if you feel like something needs to be added. And if you want to know more, book a reading on my website, anastasiadoesastrology.com. Now, if you were born with Venus in Sagittarius, this is a Jupiterian Venus. This is Venus in the sign of conquistador, adventurer, optimistic, Jupiter-ruled Venus. So a lot will depend on the position of your natal Jupiter, right? That's why we need to look at the entire chart. But in general, Venus in Sagittarius is enthusiastic. It's playful, it's adventurous, it's very optimistic. And it's a lot of times like really blunt and really in your face. If they like you, you know it. They have this like, they're very philosophical, I think. They can strike a conversation with you, inspire you, or kind of ignite your attraction with what they have to share. Really like interested in learning, interested in teaching other people. Attracted to foreign people, attracted to people who can teach them something, right? Someone who speaks a different language, someone who lived a varied, interesting life, someone who can add to your experience, right? You really want someone who's like tolerant and broad-minded and honest and adventurous, very similar to you. You may be really enthusiastic in the early stages of the relationship and also just like enjoy the beginnings because they're like most fresh and most fun. And kind of always have a little bit of like a free-spirited, you're my friend type energy in a relationship. Might actually, even enjoy having more friends than necessarily being in a relationship. The shadow side here, the danger here is, kind of wanting to explore as much and move on and have as many adventures, and that may run into an issue of building a kind of a stable relationship. And of course, a lot, once again, depends on the rest of your chart. What is your Mars doing? What is the moon? What is the sun doing in your chart? But yeah, like I think sometimes there could be a little bit of like freedom loving, a little bit too blunt, maybe too kind of like direct at times, that can affect your relationship. But I think if you're with someone who like gives you freedom and supports you and teaches you things and accepts you for who you are, that could be like really great for you. Color red could suit you quite well too. And if you want additional support, Venus in Libra too is a great fit, because it's Venus in the air sign working together with your fire sign. You can find that on my website, and you can book a reading if you want to know more. Anastasiadoesastrology.com. Let me know how this resonates. If you have anything else to share, do not hesitate to do so. Now, if you were born with Venus in Capricorn, here we're entering the territory of Saturn. Capricorn is ruled by Saturn. It's a yin Saturn, so it's more like feminine, traditional, a little bit conservative Saturn, and that of course affects Venus in this placement too. So Venus in Capricorn is very loyal. It's very interested in building long-term relationships, creating stability. It's not afraid to work hard, right? Like Capricorn is always the placement that is not afraid to work towards their goals. So here, if you're in a relationship, you're committed to someone, you know that, there is a difficult period in your relationship, you're not gonna give up on things. You will persevere. You're maybe more attracted to people who possess an element of like authority, status, because Capricorn is the sign of authority and status, so you might be attracted and drawn to people in power. Your boss, your teacher, dating someone older comes with this quite a lot. That will also depend on the rest of your chart and specifically your rising sign. But like dating someone who can provide, or at the very least has potential, like you're not going to date a loser, let's say. And that is also, there's very different definitions of what a loser is. But yeah, like you're attracted to someone who can like provide for you, someone who has potential. A little bit slower, I think, too, in the beginning, because you don't want to rush into things, because you're very discerning, you have high standards, and you will uphold your standards, you will uphold your boundaries. That could be the challenge at times, just being a little bit more like self-protective and not showing your feelings, right? So that the person doesn't pick up the energy from you and ends up like walking off. But like I think it's like a very like passionate, but maybe at times like a little bit more cool, level-headed, detached placement, and a very, very committed placement. Let me know how this resonates, and if you're curious to know more, book a reading on my website, Anastasiadoesastrology.com. Now, if you were born with Venus in Aquarius, this is a Saturnian Venus. I'm a traditional astrologer in traditional astrology. Saturn is in charge of Aquarius, but it's a young Saturn. It's a rebellious Saturn. If you think of it like Saturn being connected to like boundaries and walls and restrictions, Saturn in Aquarius is outside the boundaries, someone who thinks outside the box. So what happens when the planet of love is hanging out in the sign of Aquarius? You become very open-minded. Very open-minded, very much not interested in the traditional definition of beauty. And that will also depend on some other things. If you're an Aquarius Venus, but Aries rising or Scorpio rising with Taurus ruling your 7th house, you might still sort of appreciate beauty. But I think you're more interested in people who can exchange ideas with you, who can brainstorm societal issues with you. And if you're not into like, if you're not the traditional Aquarian type, but like talk about things that you're passionate about, there's always going to be an element of like environmentalist, creating. I think I have an Aquarius friend of a friend. She started making candles while recycling old liquor bottles. So like not your traditional, we got to make the world a better place, but kind of we got to make the world a better place. Like she doesn't go and participate in protests or like has an extremely strong like maybe political opinion, but she's very kind of into the environment. So you might have this like interest in unique things, unique tastes, maybe more scientific, futuristic, bent to your mind, as well as maybe connected with astrology, crystals, tarot, woo-woo type things. It's a very unconventional placement. Your love life can be very unconventional. You can be someone who's like in a long-term relationship, but you don't live in the same house, because you don't need sort of traditional norms to define who you are. Very experimental, very free, a little bit detached, a little bit impersonal at times, can be very cold. I dated once a guy with Venus in Aquarius, and when he broke up with me, he told me that maybe I should try a different dating app. And I was like, oh my God, we're like, why would you tell this to me? That was just so cold, but like he was trying to be helpful. I think he was like literally being helpful, and I was like, I'm so heartbroken right now. It was a 3 months long relationship, but it's still like, it still like touched me deeply, I think. Thankfully that's in the past, but that's like, I think, a very clear example. Like they're very, very charming, but at times a little bit like aloof and cooler. And a lot really depends on the rest of the chart. You can be someone with Venus and Aquarius and like very emotional and deep. But I think there's just like, there's a little bit of like, Saturn always creates a little bit of like rational attitude when it comes to relationships, a little bit more like from a distance looking in. And you always, with this placement, you always want a partner who's a friend. Like you might start a relationship from being friends first, or you might kind of consider them being your like special friend. If you want help with your relationships, if you feel like you're struggling in any way, Venus in Libra too is a really, really great choice for you. It can help create sort of more balance, more harmony, maybe connect with your imagination and your femininity on some levels. Let me know how this resonates. If you're curious to know more, book a reading on my website, anastasiadoesastrology.com. Now, if you were born with Venus in Pisces, this is the exalted, empowered, strong Venus. And any planet, when we say it's exalted, it means that it's placed in the sign where it's somehow inhibited, but in a good way. So with Venus being in Pisces, it's the sign of Jupiter. Jupiter is like very big, all-consuming, all-loving. So the love in Venus and Pisces becomes really big, all-consuming, all-loving, right? Venus and Pisces people, and I have a Venus and Pisces, exalted Pisces, exalted Venus candle, if you want some of that energy in your life. They're super romantic. They love love. They love heartbreak. They love love songs, heartbreak songs. They might write poetry. They might, Ed Sheeran has this placement. They might sing about love. And it's interesting, right? Because Ed Sheeran is an Aquarius. So if you just look at his sun sign, you're like, oh, he's supposed to be like rational, detached, scientific. But his Venus is in Pisces, and his songs are about love, about like, the best kind of love there is. A lot of times I think with Venus and Pisces, there's a sense of longing for something that is not quite tangible. And that's maybe where Venus is a little bit limited, because like you're longing for something that, life is not always willing to give you. So you may end up a little bit disappointed. Venus and Pisces people are very sensual, very compassionate, very selfless in a lot of ways. And that sometimes doesn't serve them well, because people might take advantage of you being in relationships with partners where you're paying rent for them because they don't want to pay rent, or you're like giving them a lot of your attention, they're not giving you back, and you're giving them a lot of chances. So it's like learning to be more, to have more discrimination, to be more sort of have stronger boundaries. And actually Venus in Libra is quite good at boundaries. So if you wanted help with that, check out my candle shop, Venus in Libra 2. But yeah, like very charming, may have sort of mermaid eyes, mermaid lips, sort of sensual lips, very romantic, very idealistic, very sort of like, I think, it doesn't just apply to love, but you care very deeply about the world. You want to make the world a better place. You want to help your community, help your country, help your family. So it could be like a very generous and loving and great kind of placement, but sometimes learning to be discerning and avoiding choosing people that are victims where they need saving. You don't want to get caught in a situation where you're just giving too much but getting nothing in return. Let me know how this resonates, and if you're curious to know more, book a reading on my website, anastasiadoesastrology.com. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm continuing looking at the planets through the zodiac signs. Any new ideas you have, send them my way. I will follow up and I will create new videos for you guys. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.